Half-Life modding is a form of art, with its only hindering feature being its availability. You will usually have to go to a site like ModDB or Run Things Should Live and install mods manually yourself. Sure, there are some that release on Steam every once in a while, but those are only the tip of the iceberg. Today I want to talk about a very great and also very underrated mod called Thunder's Leaves. Thunder's Leaves is a mod released in 2021 by Andrey Gorkin. Let's go back to the start though. I've personally been following this mod for way longer. I remember subbing to the channel that showed off the development of this mod back in 2018. The first video on the channel being a trailer for a demo of Thunder's Leaves. This demo featured a few maps that we would later see in the final version, almost unchanged. The demo featured a kind of hazard course, teaching us the custom mechanics like the new armor you get. The so-called electric armor is pretty similar, but not the exact same as the HEV suit. You're still able to charge it, but it's a lot different from what we know from Half-Life. Before we get to learn anything about the new armor though, we get introduced to Captain, who will guide us through this hazard course. In this hazard course you learn how to charge the armor by hitting electrical boxes and standing in its electrical beams. This will cause you to take health damage and charge your armor. It's a bit of a trade-off, but an interesting concept. You also get introduced to a new type of enemy, a combine soldier with a shield around it. You kill it by shooting these things at the bottom of the shield when they're sparking, which is really hard to tell because everything's sparking already and already making electrical sounds. So this was really confusing for me playing it first time, and it got changed in the final version, thankfully. You also get to meet this little guy. It's a reprogrammed manhack used to hack certain things, like doors for example. You get a custom assigned key for this, which is C. This guy's really helping to put the hack in manhack. Huh? Right? Right guys? We get introduced to a new type of turret that also fires rockets. The problem being that these rockets also hurt the player, so you essentially had to just place it there and hope that it kills everything on its own. We also get introduced to the supercharge mode. Different from the usual electrical charge we get, this one doesn't cause your health to go down and also charges your armor up to 600. You also have electrical pulses coming out of your armor, which kill everything that's in close range of you. The supercharge mode will disable itself periodically and then enable again, which was later changed. The voice acting in this demo was... I let it speak for itself.
That will decide for sure.
You did so well that now I'll have to spend especially much time sweeping the splinters out.
Yeah, excellent fighter.
At some points it was a bad audio quality and at some points it was just not understandable what they were saying.
I think he's defeating Liz.
I know I'm not the authority on good pronunciation, but I have no clue what he was saying there at the end. But thankfully we have subtitles which show us what he was supposed to be saying.
I think he's defeating Liz.
And it seems like they got completely different mics in between sentences even. Like, listen to this.
Agrees that you will be worthy fighter of the squad. So what, do we enlist him in the squad?
The voice acting continued to be a big part of the criticism that this mod faced, which I will get to later. Some weapons were changed a bit. The SMG and shotgun got a rework, having the mag size changed and getting a different look. If you were to cheat the bug bait at this stage, it would look like this. At this point it still behaved like a normal bug bait. This would later be changed in the final version to actually be useful. A bit of story, or rather world building, was included. Long after the events of episode 2, the rebels managed to convert combine technology to work for them. We are shown right at the beginning of the mod how scanners are used to fertilize their crops. Modified manhacks are used for both the hacking tool we get and in the shooting range as targets. The demo also ends in a cliffhanger. We're shown that all electronics seem to fail and an advisor pops up on the screen, after which it fades to black. I mean, this is a pretty clever way to end the demo as to build up hype for the final mod, which it did for me, but I really got disappointed when I got to finally play the mod. You'll see why. One thing that was universally enjoyed was the graphics of this mod. This demo showed us beautifully designed environments. These were also shown in the videos posted on the High Voltage channel. I was excited each time I saw an update posted, usually showing off new environments or enemies. This mod was aiming for something big, and these videos really made it evident. Almost 4 years after the release of the demo, the final mod released. Following were a couple patches, which basically just included bug fixing, and so we got the final mod. I will not spoil anything that isn't in about the first 25 minutes of the mod besides a bit of gameplay afterwards. The mod itself takes about 2 hours in total. The mod started with the entirety of the demo again, with some minor changes. We finally got actual leaves. Yay! Get it? A big change being that the voice acting improved a lot. It went from horrid to quite alright actually.
Captain, he's ready for the trial.
Yeah, I see for myself. The armor fits you like a glove.
A lot of people still hate on this mod for the voice acting, which I don't get it even a bit. Like, okay, I get it a bit. It's like, there are some interesting moments in the writing.
It's time to take the old days.
That's what I always say.
That's not something that people say!
You see this happen a lot when Half-Life mods are made by non-native English speakers. I feel like if you were to play this mod without knowing of the criticism, you wouldn't notice it. But then again, I'm not a native English speaker, so What do I know? Moving on, the weapons got changed even more. Both the modified SMG and the modified AR2 you get later in the game fire slower the longer you spray for, which is a really interesting mechanic. The shielded combine unit has changed so that you have to hit manhack like enemies to disable the shield and kill the combine. The supercharged mode of the armor was changed a bit, it would no longer disable periodically. A thing to note is that we have to play through this entire, essentially basic training room without possibility of skipping it. I would get this if Thunder's Leaves was its own game, but it's not. Everyone has played Half-Life 2 before, so lots of parts of this training are not really necessary as weapons weren't changed that drastically. I feel like the dialogue with Captain saves this a bit, and I feel like the level design is interesting enough to not have this be a completely miserable experience. You'll have fun looking around this place. And the vest being explained and supercharging and the turret stuff, those were fun and also necessary to explain, of course. Overall, this tutorial seemed a bit long still, a bit stretched rather. After the cliffhanger we got in the demo, the story essentially just cuts and we are never really told what happened. We are now in another shooting range type warehouse and I kinda think it's a weird decision to not at all explain what happened at the end of the demo. We can really only assume it to be another impulse wave. What's an impulse wave, you might ask? Well, it's the thing we get right at the start of the mod.
Ah, shit! Another impulse wave of combine!
Damn, here it goes again. Careful. Seems this time the shaking was weak.
We also don't really know how much time has passed since this cut. This makes the first part almost completely irrelevant to the story, except of the part that we got picked up for the team because of our skills. Which makes the decision to make the first 20 minutes of this mod mandatory and not just a skippable training room like in Half-Life 1 even weirder to me. So yeah, back to the impulse wave. We get hit by an impulse wave, as it's named by the captain. These impulse waves seem to happen every so often, which we find out by the captain saying that the shaking this time was weak. After this we leave the building and see how both the people and the technology of the settlement are affected by this impulse wave. The settlement setting is really beautiful, and in my opinion one of the highlights of this mod. You truly feel like you are in a place full of life, or should I say full of Half-Life. Entering this building you even get to interact with this NPC and do a quick side quest for a bit of suit armor. This is also the first time we find one of these recorders. You can find a lot of these recorders throughout the mod. These add a little extra world building if you're willing to listen to them, which I am not! Just kidding, of course, I did listen to them sometimes. However, something I'm definitely listening to is the soundtrack. It doesn't sound like a Half-Life soundtrack at all, but it fits perfectly into the atmosphere of this mod. Most of the background music in this video is taken from the mod, so if you're willing to listen to it, I will link it in the description. It's pretty cool. After arriving at the control room, we find out that one of the sectors is not responding, Sector D. You, along with two others named Xana and Felix, are tasked with getting there and finding out what happened. Xana and Felix are out on patrol, so you'll have to meet up with them first. You get your weapons and you get to choose a capsule. Depending on what capsule you pick, you will receive different types of ammo throughout the game via modified headcrab canisters. This adds a bit of replayability, which is also neat. This is where the main gameplay loop for about the first half of the mod begins basically, where you just move through these suburban neighborhoods, which are beautifully designed by the way, mostly broken down and infested by zombies. Later on you meet a zombie with the same vest as you, this one being supercharged. These are quite a challenge to fight and probably the coolest new enemy of this mod. There are also these poison headcrabs with explosives attached to them, which incentivize the player to not just kill them using the crowbar as you would usually do. This enemy is like fine, but at one point you get placed one right in front of you in a vent, essentially just being unavoidable damage. A high amount of damage, I might add. Later on you eventually meet up with Xana and Felix. I must say, Xana kinda reminds me of someone.
You fucked up my face.
The gameplay still stays about the same and you eventually arrive at Sector D. We get a bit of funny foreshadowing.
Combine technology. Why do we trust it so much?
And then meet up with the people of Sector D. Everyone there seems to be alive and doing well. The recent impulse wave has knocked out all the technology. This is the reason we were unable to contact them earlier. So this seems like a happy ending, right? Everyone's fine, we'll just repair everything and there we go, right? No, not so quick, not so quick. Don't forget the funny foreshadowing.
The goddamn funny foreshadowing.
Shortly afterwards, the settlement gets attacked by the Combine. This is also where you get your next new weapon, the Rebel AR2. It's pretty similar to the normal AR2, besides not having a secondary fire. It has the same mechanic as the SMG where the longer you shoot for, the slower the fire rate gets. I really love the sound of this. You also get the normal SMG and normal AR2, which are now renamed to Combine SMG and Combine AR2, so you now have both a Rebel and Combine version of both of these guns. Another impulse wave happens and you get knocked out for seemingly a couple of seconds. This is where we get to fight the shielded Combine for the first time. After this, a gigantic impulse wave seems to hit the settlement. This time the shaking is real strong. You get knocked out once again. After an unknown amount of time passed, you get awoken by Captain. as seemingly the only survivor of this event, and find that the entire settlement is on fire. Captain tells you that the Combine managed to use the technology of theirs we converted against us again. Who would have thought that could happen? You move through the underground and find some of the technology that we previously saw working for us, working against us. The scanners which previously sprayed fertilizers on the plants now spray red toxic fumes. We never get told what exactly this is, except for one of the voice recorders mentioning it's poison. It causes the player to cough and take damage, so that's all you need to know. After a bit of exploring through the underground, we finally meet again with Xana and Felix and go into planning. The Combine are hatching a plan to attack the whole city. We need to contact and warn the other sectors, but all technology has failed and radio only works locally at this point. Through this we find out that there's one otherwise unused radio tower left that could be used to contact the other settlements and warn them. Before heading there, we are able to update our capsule with new ammo. We also get the portable radio we saw in the demo, now working as a way to call in capsules wherever we are, if possible. We also get a car filled with the hack machines we saw in the beginning. I was stuck at this part for a while because this is not really explained that well in this scenario. You have to go to the back of the car, press E, then move the man hack here and press the hack button. Only then will the gate open. Pressing C always emits the same sound, which caused me to believe hacking didn't work. This wasn't explained or hinted at by anyone here, so you just had to find this out on your own. But now we set up for a fun adventure with the car. I will stop spoiling the story at this point, but I will talk about everything else. But essentially you just drive from environment to environment, hacking some stuff and collecting loot on the way to the unused radio tower. The finale is basically an open world where you can complete objectives in the order that you want. Probably one of the best parts of the mod. However, due to not having a gravity gun and never getting into the game, it's easy to get your car stuck. The level is designed in a way to avoid this, but it can still happen. There are 2 different endings you can achieve, depending on if you manage to find all the superchargers, which you are told are nearby by this hut hint. The 2 endings are not that different from each other, which I think is a bit of a shame, but then again I don't want to spoil what happens, you just have to play it for yourself. The combat, exploration, custom enemies and custom weapons of this mod are incredible for the rest of the game. There's an endline variation which is about the same, but they explode when killed. There are also a few more Combine variations. These only differ from the normal Combine in HP and looks, but they're still pretty cool. There's another boss fight at the end, which I will not spoil. You also get the crossbow later. It's exactly the same, but without a scope attached. You can still zoom in though, so I don't know what exactly this changes. You also get the Rebel Grenade and the Combine Grenade respectively, which function exactly the same. And you get the RPG, which looks different, but is the same as always. The level design of this mod is some of the most creative and good looking I've seen in my time playing mods. And I've played a lot of mods. One thing I'd like to note that I think this mod does really well is introducing new features and not forgetting about them. Seeing a mod add a new mechanic, be it an enemy or a weapon or a custom feature, is nothing new really. In most cases they just use it once at the beginning and once near the end. Take Hunter on the Freeman for example, and yes I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but them adding a parkour system, explaining it once in the tutorial levels which you can skip, then never seeing it again for about 4 hours, and then having it suddenly show up, which causes most people to have no idea what they are doing and cheat their way through the level.
Okay, so just no clip to the top.
I'll even go as far as to criticize opposing force for this, if not that bad of a case. You get teach about the climbable ropes in this tutorial, after which they don't show up for about the next 8 maps. I wouldn't expect anyone to have forgotten how ropes worked at this point. As I said, it's not that bad of a case, but it just seems like that the devs were like, oh shit, we forgot about the ropes, about 3/4 into the development. And of course, I do still love opposing force. Thundersleeves manages to not do this in the slightest. You get introduced mechanics and they are used throughout the entirety of the mod consistently. Of course, this is easier to achieve with the mod being only 2 to 2.5 hours long, but it's just something that caught my attention and I feel like pointing it out. It just adds a lot to the polished feeling of this mod. Overall, I think this mod has gotten way too little recognition for what it did. It told a completely different story in a completely different part of the world in a completely different time in the Half-Life universe and managed to make it fit perfectly. If it weren't for the bad voice acting reputation this mod got, which is sometimes understandable but blown way out of proportion in my opinion, I could see it being mentioned every time there's talk about great Half-Life 2 mods. I recommend everybody check it out and check out Half-Life 2 mods in general. I will add a tutorial on how to install Half-Life 2 mods in the description. It's incredibly simple once you know how to. I'd also recommend you to check out my 3 great mod series to find some great mods to play. So some final words. Thundersleeves is a great example of what Half-Life 2 mods are capable of, and I hope this video gives this mod the recognition it deserves. Of course, a big thank you to Andrey Gorkin who made this video possible by making this incredible mod. I will link his channel in the description and I definitely suggest you to check it out. So yeah, thank you for watching.